Technical consideration of the practical aspect of pranayama. A. Correct posture for pranayama. B. Technique of puraka. C. Technique of kumbhaka. D. Technique of rechaka. E. Different varieties of pranayama. The manipulation of breath in pranayama is a conscious, skillful, precise and definitive technique. Most of the techniques of pranayama in vogue today incorporate only the abhyantara kumbhaka, i.e. the phase of the inner retention of the breath. They increase pressure inside the cavity of the chest and the abdomen during this phase. Apart from the time duration for which this phase is maintained, has become all-important factor in the technique of pranayama. To sustain and maintain these pressures at a very high level, an additional technique called bandha is used. It essentially involves the contraction of some specific cervical, abdominal, and perineal muscles. The contraction of the perineal muscles as well as the anal sphincters is known as mula bandha, while the contraction of the anterior abdominal muscles is known as uddiyana bandha, and the contraction of the anterior cervical muscles and vocal cords is known as jalandhara bandha. Thus, technically speaking, we find that in pranayama there is an emphasis on the manipulation of the internal pressures and maintenance of these pressure changes for considerable length of time. This helps in expanding the range of voluntary control over the whole of the respiratory cycle, especially over the phase kumbhaka. The actual technique of pranayamic breathing is quite an elaborate one. We find that there are specific rules laid down in yogic literature regarding the posture in which it is to be performed, the method, the force and the duration of each phase of pranayamic breathing, and also the attention to be paid to the various sensations arising within the body space during different phases of pranayama. The essential features of each of these technical details are given below. The correct posture for the practice of pranayama. During the performance of pranayama, one needs to sit in the same position for a long time. Whichever sitting posture one selects, it needs to be stable, sthira, so that minimum efforts are required to maintain it, prayatna shaithilya, and it should also be comfortable, sukha, so that it can be maintained with the mind free from any distraction arising from the physical discomfort, anadhaspati. There are 4 meditative postures which fulfill these requirements. They are Padmasana, Siddhasana, Swastikasana and Samansana. The salient features which are common to all these postures include the broad base which gives the stability to the body posture, and the erect trunk which allows the spinal column to remain in the natural state where all the natural curves are maintained without any distortion. In the natural state, when seen from the side, there is a forward curvature in the neck and in the lumbar region, and backward curvature in the dorsal and in the sacral region. By sitting erect, all these curves are maintained in natural shape, and the head, neck, chest, and abdomen find themselves in a balanced state in relation to each other. Samakaya Shirogriva. This gives a free play to all the muscles involved in a breathing activity. This kind of posture also requires a minimum of effort to maintain the body position, and the energy consumption being least, causes minimum strain on cardiorespiratory system. Regarding the position of the spine, there is one additional point which also has a great importance in the tradition of yoga, and that is the forward inclination of the pelvis with respect to the spinal column at the lumbosacral junction, at an angle of 30 degrees. This forward tilt of the pelvis allows the perineum to get pressed by the heel kept against it as in the posture of Siddhasana, or by the ground itself as in a posture like Padmasana or Guptasana. This increased pressure over the perineal region is supposed to stimulate Muladhara chakra situated at the center of perineum. This pressure from below helps in opposing and overcoming the force flowing downward as felt during the phase of puraka and kumbhaka, and helps in redirecting it upwards during the phase of rechaka. Ultimately, this helps in making the prana flow upward through the central channel, as one gradually enters the subtle practice of pranayama. That is why, While describing the meditative posture, Saint Gyaneshwara specifically mentions that one should lift the tip of the spine up, tilting the base of the sacrum forward at the pelvis but keeping the trunk erect. The ability of a person to sit in this type of comfortable and stable posture fairly for a long time is known as asnasthaya, and when one gets a perfect mastery over the posture resulting in the freedom from the tyranny of dvandvas, the opposing forces causing the disturbance in a balanced functioning of the body-mind complex, it is known as asnajay. As we have already seen, Patanjali in his sutra gives a specific emphasis on the fact that pranayam should be done only after securing the state of asana. The term tasmin sati used by him can be interpreted in two ways. The word tasmin may stand for 1. Dvandavana bhighata, or 2. Just simply the asana. If the first interpretation is accepted, then the sutra would mean that pranayam should be practiced only after dvandavana bhighata state, i.e. unaffectedness from conflict. In other words, the complete mastery over the asana is achieved. With second interpretation, the sutra would mean that the pranayam is to be done while sitting in the posture of asana, just the stable and comfortable posture, without necessarily waiting for its final mastery. Many authorities, therefore, are of the view that there is no need to wait till the stage of asnajay is reached. One can start the practice of pranayam as soon as one is able to sit in any meditative posture for a fairly long time, meaning thereby that one can begin the practice of pranayam even with the asnasthaya stage. As the practice of asana and pranayam continues together, one gradually progresses towards the level of asnajay while simultaneously mastering the skill of pranayam.